With so much going on in Natlan, I thought I would make another prediction video. There's still so much up in the air right now, even though we're only one patch away from release. But given the new teaser that just dropped, I decided to throw my hat into the endless ring of theorizing. In my previous video, I focused mostly on how the Archons and the dragons might come into play in Natlan. And though I do have my preferences, despite the official reveal of who we can assume to be the Pyro Archon, I'd like to focus instead on some different elements of the Natlan Archon quest, namely Xbalanque and the tournament we see taking place in the newest teaser. Also, as a heads up, I would like to apologize. I'm absolutely going to butcher most of the pronunciations for this region. I promise I'm really trying and I'm looking at pronunciations, so I'll do my best. So, who is Xbalanque? Well, all we really know about him is currently that he's the one entombed with the primal fire. Some interesting word choice here, in my opinion. He is not entombed by the primal fire, but with it. This gives some interesting connotations. By saying he is with the fire, it makes me wonder if he's somehow keeping the fire at bay, if the primal fire is left over from some unknown source, perhaps the pyro dragon. Then it would make sense that it would be volatile. Additionally, Xbalanque mentions in Neuvillette's official introduction when they, presumably the dragons, return, they will face their true ordeal. Now that sounds very ominous to me, truthfully, but it's also an interesting thing to say when we look at Natlan as a whole. Neuvillette says that he doubts he would be welcomed by the dragons that still live in Natlan, as they've undergone evolution beside humans, leading them to be very different from the original sovereigns. And on top of this, it seems as if the Saurians, which are likely the dragons Neuvillette is referring to, have a sort of companionship with the people of Natlan. When Neuvillette says this, what I think he means is that the Saurians are comfortable with their coexistence, and even if a dragon sovereign were to come back, they would not necessarily want to follow them if it meant harm would come to their human companions. What the true ordeal is, in my opinion, could be a lot of different things. For one, it could be the idea that the dragons will have to contend with how Teyvat has changed in the years that they've been gone, and they will have to learn and adapt to life as it is now. Or perhaps, more intensely, it could have to do with the Primordial One. Now, why do I think that? The Primordial One wanted to create a world for humans, and additionally fought the dragons and defeated them to this end. The Primordial One may not take kindly to the idea of coexistence between dragons and humans. This being said, even with the supposed destruction of an Archon seat of power, we still don't have much of an indication that Celestia is making any real kind of move, so this is still up in the air. Dragon tangent aside, Xbalanque has some interesting connotations himself. He is from Maya mythology, one of the hero twins. Xbalanque and his brother are perhaps most well known for the ball game they play in the underworld, and the various trials and deaths they overcome. Death is woven very closely in Xbalanque's story. Both brothers die and come back to life several times within the story. More interestingly, fire is also very prevalent in their myth as well. Xbalanque and his brother are able to burn houses down with people inside, the fire not harming the people, only to recreate the house from the ashes. Xbalanque's ties to both fire and death are interesting. The ability to be reborn from the ashes of a fire are similar to that of the phoenix, which we know will likely be an important motif in the Natlan region. It also foreshadows that death could be a prevalent theme in Natlan. I'm not sure how dark Hoyo will really go with all of this, but the first thing that came to my mind when it said the champion takes all is that they might rule over Natlan for the next year. What this might also mean is that it's their job to keep watch over the primal fire, which I imagine comes with a very inherent risk. Perhaps that's why we see certain characters grow angry or just express utter disinterest with the entire process. Moving on to the ballgame itself, it is mentioned by Venti in the manga that even when Murata was in charge, there were often tournaments of some kind, rites of combat, though whether these were truly gladiatorial or not remains to be seen. The way Venti speaks about them seems to be more that they were games or tournaments, ceremonial in purpose, even this long ago. Natlan being known as a nation of war is interesting because if this is true, then it seems as if these wars that Natlan participates in are more for show, ceremonial, and done in a fashion that would be akin to a sports competition today. Even still, Capitano in the teaser seems reluctant to participate, even as the Pyro Archon goads him into it. This indication to me says that there's still definitely some level of danger involved in these supposed games. Then there is the last line the Pyro Archon says, "With our blood, we will forge our true fate." This definitely seems far more serious than a simple ball game. Blood and blood sacrifices are fairly common in Aztec and Mayan mythology, but they serve a very symbolic purpose. Generally, blood sacrifices in Aztec mythology were more about renewal, sustaining certain gods with power. If that is the case, it makes one wonder how the primal fire keeps burning. Do the people of Natlan need to die for the primal fire to continue? I would be somewhat surprised if this is the direction that Genshin decides to go in simply because it is quite dark, but it does make one wonder. Additionally, we know that resurrection is going to be a prominent theme in Natlan. Most of us were wondering if that could be Murata or the Pyro Dragon Sovereign, or most recently Xbalanque. But what if it's more abstract than that? What if it's the primal fire itself that will need resurrection? Or could it be something else entirely? One final point that's more of a tangent than anything else. We do know that there was a period in Natlan's past where the tribes often fought amongst themselves. The lore of the talking stick expresses as such. Tanakh gathered members from all 6 tribes to fight to protect Natlan, and this seems to be one of their most well-recorded stories, at least as of this recording. I would also argue that they're fighting against corruption, but I digress. That's an idea for a different video. It is interesting then that this seems to have happened too long ago to have been the Cataclysm. But even still, this story, at least to me, indicates that Natlan is at its strongest when fighting to protect their way of life and their homeland. So far, everything we've seen from Natlan has been relatively peaceful. Definitely not anything any of us were expecting, or at the very least, definitely not what I was expecting. So I wonder if the war Natlan will face will instead be one that will threaten the whole of Natlan. Instead of a war of conquest or aggression, it will be a war to protect their home and their people. It would make things rather interesting, especially considering Capitano has repeatedly been described as righteous. Perhaps Capitano has agreed to help the Pyro Archon with this war that Natlan will face in exchange for the Pyronosis. Again, these are all just my thoughts leading up to 5.0, though I'll be excited to see how things change and evolve as things progress. What do you think? Do you agree with any of my points or thoughts? Will death be an important theme in Natlan? Let me know your thoughts down below. And, do all the like and subscribing and all that things. May the wind bless your travels.